Hello, everybody. Thank y'all for tuning in. Today, we're talking about movie production. My name is Reginald Titus Jr. I'm the executive director for Ground Matter Foundation. We're a 501c3, and our main thing is about having representation in front of and behind the camera. The ways that we do that is by having workshops, virtual workshops like we're doing today, and also in the future we're going to be having master classes where we dive deeper into these workshops. Also, we're going to be having a drone scholarship. So anybody interested into flying drones, getting licenses, they can join that scholarship program. And also one of our flagship programs is whenever we're producing like full feature films, we'll have students and people that are interested in joining the film production shadow our actual productions. But today we're going to be talking about movie production. And today we have Alexandra Boylan. Hello, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Reginald. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we're so happy to have you today. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna jump into your bio and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Uh, Alexandra Boylan is a dynamic award-winning filmmaker, writer, producer, and actress who has been trailblazing through Hollywood for nearly 2 decades. Born and raised in Massachusetts, Boylan is known for her fearless pursuit of meaningful content. In addition to her numerous acting credits, Alexandra co-created the Boylan Sisters Production Company, a successful film studio that focuses on the faith-based and family-friendly content. Their first feature film, which was Catching Faith, streamed on Netflix for 2 years and it spawned a sequel as well as paved the way for other critically acclaimed movies such as The Greatest Inheritance and Switch. Their latest venture, Identity Crisis, also serves as a basis for a young adult novel, which she co-authored with her sister and business partner, Andrea. The film won Best Screenplay at this International Christian Film Festival. Alexandra has previously published the widely regarded how-to guide entitled Create Your Own Career in Hollywood, advice from a struggling actress who became a successful producer, and is an active member of Influence Women in Los Angeles. Alexandra Boylan, thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And people that's on the stream, Alexandra, she actually helped us with our feature film back in 2018 for Natural Hair, the movie. And all of her advice really guided us in creating and getting to distribution and having a profitable film. So she's the real deal.
Thank you. I'm so glad I was able to be helpful.
Absolutely. And the things that I like about your productions and your films is that we're about having representation in front of and behind the camera. You make sure that your voice is being represented, the people that you represent are being represented on film. Can you talk a little bit about why that's important to you?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. It's so important to me. Well, as a woman, I want to see women on camera. And when I had made a little thriller film and that film did well, and I was given the opportunity to make a faith-based film, and this was back in 2011, my sales agent recommended that I make a faith-based film. I am a minister's kid. I do come from the faith, so I could authentically speak into that audience. But I looked at the landscape of faith-based back in 2011, and there weren't a lot of women in the leading roles. And I thought, well, okay, I'll make a movie. The requirement was football. And we had to have football. And I was like, okay, we'll do a football movie, but I wanted to star a woman. And actually, my sales agent at the time said, you can't do that. There's no numbers in the marketplace to back up a female-driven faith-based film because there wasn't any at the time. And I said, I think that's because no one's doing it. If we could prove that there's an audience that's really desperate to be spoken to. And he did. And we made Catching Faith, and it released. It went on to become the top 5 consistent selling movie for the distribution company. And it's been seen all over the world. And it's paved the way not only for all of our movies, but it's paved the way for other women to step into this space and tell their stories.
Absolutely. We're going to dive right into producing. So you say you're a producer. What are the different definitions of producer? Because there's many definitions. So you'll have people that operate as like an executive producer, or a line producer, or associate producer. Can you talk further about like what does a producer mean? What does that mean?
First off, when I think of the word producer, I think you do everything because that is every job is the producer's job. It's one of the only jobs on a film set that you could never say, well, that wasn't my job, because you oversee the entire project. So it's a huge undertaking. I don't take that being a producer lightly, because it's a huge responsibility. I am a creative film producer. I write all my films and I take them from conception to completion. So I actually do see the movie through the entire, from script to screen. I do it all. And then an executive producer usually depends on the project, but they're handling the money, the financing. A lot of times your executive producer is somebody who's going out and getting the funding for you. Or if I, as a producer, has gotten the funding, they step in and take over with the LLCs, the bank accounts, the money. They're the money people. And then a lot of times the executive producer will handle the money, at least in our case, handling paying out people to the pay back to the investors and to the points in the back end. A line producer is handling physical production on set. They're taking that budget and making sure that the budget's being spent correctly. The line producer's job is, besides the fact that a producer, that it's your job too, that everything, that your project's coming under budget, that you're not going over budget. That's their job on set, is to handle the budget. They'll also work with you on crewing up the project, but they're all physical production. And then when it comes to, like, you'll hear showrunner. A showrunner is just television. It's usually the creator of the project, and they're the showrunner for television. A co-producer could also be, if, like, on my last film, Identity Crisis, Andrea and I teamed up with Third Coast Content. So we did a co-production. Our production partnered with their production, and we were co-producers. We all got a producer credit, but our production companies were together creating this project. And then you'll see associate producer. Sometimes that can be thrown around a lot. It's kind of like a junior thing, whether someone gave you a really great location or they introduced you to an actor and you maybe don't want to give them a producer credit, you'll give them an associate producer credit. So, but really, when you are the producer of a film, you are responsible for everything. And especially because I take my own movies from conception to completion, I do everything. And sometimes I've even mopped the floors after filming in a location, because everything is my responsibility, from locations to the money, to the financiers, to handling the cast and crew.
Sometimes you'll see like the acronym, the PGA, and what does that represent? Because I know producers, sometimes they'll have that acronym out of their name. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Producers Guild of America. That I actually do have that next to my name on 3 films. I'm actually not in the Producers Guild of America. It's an interesting guild because, you know, you have the DGA, the Directors Guild of America, Screen Actors Guild, to protect those people on set. And the PGA is kind of funny because the PGA is the job to protect everyone. So who protects PGA? They're not really, it's really more of a, I've been to some events, but it's not, there isn't, since they're the higher ups and they're in charge of the set, that isn't like DGA where you're being protected as the director from the producers. So PGA is just a group of producers in the PGA, and but it's actually their responsibility to make sure that that set is being run properly, because there isn't, you know, that's your job. So, but PGA is the Producers Guild of America, and it's an organization, a group of people, and I've been to a lot of their events, and I thought about joining, but it's not like DGA or SAG where you get health insurance or you don't get insurance through PGA. Not that I'm aware of, but someone might scold me on that. I don't know.
Okay. You had mentioned like getting LLCs, like the executive producer and things like that. Now, does every movie that's produced, is it its own business and its own LLC? Can you kind of talk about that? Because sometimes that can be tricky.
Yes. So absolutely. Every single movie is its own LLC. I learned that on my first feature film when I made my production company LLC. I learned from my executive producer, you want a film LLC, because what happens is hopefully if you have multiple movies, I now have 8 feature films. An LLC you need to have for each movie to protect each movie, because if somebody came back to me now 8 movies later and wanted to sue me for a movie, they could sue your whole entire company if you don't have them each protected under their own LLC. So say someone came after Catching Faith and they were mad about something and wanted to sue. They could only sue the LLC. They couldn't go after all of my 8 feature films. That's why it's really important to have an LLC for each movie. You don't want to put your movies under your production company LLC as a flat thing, because then if anything was to happen, they could come after the rights or the finances of all of your movies.
Wow. How so who keeps track of that? So for example, say if you got 20, 30, 40, 50 films, like who's going to be that lucky person that takes care of all that? And how would
I
you do that?
know. Well, I mean, so we have an executive producer for 6 of our movies, I believe, that we've worked with, and we work together. And then, of course, when you sell to a distribution company, then the distribution company holds the rights to your movie. And if that's why there's something called E&O insurance. So when you sell to a distribution company, you have to have E&O insurance. It's errors and omissions insurance, which protects the distribution company for being sued for something you might have done in your movie. So the distribution company is going to start tracking everything. But yes, that's why being a producer, it is not a little job, because you are in charge of your movies for the rest of your life. I'm still working on Home Sweet Home, which I shot in 2010. I'm still responsible for that movie, and anything that happens under that film, I'm still working on it 12 years later. So you as the producer are responsible for that. Hopefully you have a team of people, or you have an executive producer that's working with you. If that answers that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about like the tools of the trade. So what are some of the must-have skill sets, for aspiring producers and working producers? What's a must-have skill set?
So I think one of the most, number one is being a finisher. Anybody can start a project. Not everybody can finish a project. And as the producer, your responsibility is that movie is made, finished, and sold, and out, and start recouping money for your investors. So I think that I've learned that a lot in the past 24 years of working in this industry, is that so many people start something, but they don't have the diligence to finish it. And that is what I have continued to prove, that I am a finisher. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. If I start something, I finish it. Even if, it falls on a hard drive and never goes anywhere, I've always promised that I will finish something. And then surround yourself with finishers. Find the movies get really held up in post-production. That's where a lot of times movies fall apart, because post can be the hardest, getting an editor, a sound designer. So when I find good people, I keep them. And so you find post people that are people of their word and will finish the job. I think obviously being a really good team leader is so important. Everything on a film set trickles down from the top. And as the producer, you're the top person. So my energy and my attitude is going to go right through the set. And I was a stand-in, I was a PA, I've worked on major Hollywood sets. And you know that if the crew is stressed out, it's because it came from the top. So I, as a producer, want to make sure that I am leading a team and helping them be the best that they can be, not adding stress to anyone. If I'm having a stressful day on set, I never want anyone on my set to know that. That's not their business. My business is I have to handle. We've had our movies almost falling apart, and none of our crew or cast had any idea. And that's your job.
Wow.
Is that no one had any idea that there was a massive issue, that you're behind the closed doors trying to solve a problem, a lost location, a lost actor, something like that. So I think being a good team leader and knowing that your attitude and how you treat people matters so much. It trickles down to the entire set, and it really sets the tone of your movie set. And you want people to want to show up. It's not just about, they're going to clock in and make money. You want everyone to come and have a great time and enjoy being there. And I think loyalty. I started my first feature film. I made out of pocket for $10,000.
Wow.
And every single person who worked on that set, when the next movie, I employed them. And I have done that. I've worked with the same people on every single one of my movies for 12 years, because I continue to bring back the ones that are good, and I help and I pay them, because if anyone helps you out in the beginning, people It's like people have amnesia in this business and they just forget about all the people who helped them. I don't. I'm always going to bat for those who were there for me when I had nothing. The more I get, the more I give back. And that's so important to build your tribe, your team, and to keep working. You'll see if you go to IMDb, I have the same team that's worked on every single one of my movies. And that's the only way you'll succeed in this business. It is no man is an island. You need a team of people to surround you to make that film possible.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I've noticed that with like certain directors, they'll have like some of the same actors or some of the same people behind the same DP or whatever. Like they kind of want to stick with their crew. They have like a little shorthand so they can kind of get right to it.
Shorthand is key. I mean, the more we were making films, it's like a well-oiled machine, and then our sets would run smoother and faster. And we were making a movie a year there for a minute where it was so great because we had a great team and we had all worked together for so long. It was like second nature, and you want that.
Speaking of which, what's like kind of like the shortest period you've seen like a movie go from idea to distribution to like kind of like the longest in your experience?
For our films, we've literally shot the movie and had it released within a year. That would be, I think that was Catching Faith 2, because we had our team in place. We got the financing. And then I think the same for Switch, because we actually we shot Catching Faith 2 in Louisville, Kentucky. And we were able to raise the money for Switch. So we just rolled everyone right back into Switch. We went back to Louisville, shot the movie. So I think those two movies were really close because we were able to roll right into the next one. Financing was in place. The team was in place. And that's why it's so important. And then, of course, it can take sometimes 3 years, I guess. And it's also depending on which part of the process. Like when I'm in script form, I'm out there pitching the script. I'm taking meetings with Netflix and Kingdom Studios and everyone I can meet with. And that could take a couple years. And then once you have the financing, it could only take a year to make it when you have it. So it just depends of which stage of the process you're in. Pitching and trying to raise money, in my opinion, has been the longest part of the process, is raising money, securing the financing. Once we have the money, we're off to the races. We can make that.
Absolutely.
But I would say it's really getting out there and getting people who are believing in your project with their money, with their dollars, or if you can get with a studio and sign with a studio. But I'll say we worked with Third Coast Content and we signed with them in January and we were shooting the movie in the next January. So that's a pretty quick to sign a co-production. And then within 1 year we were shooting the movie.
Okay. So you were kind of talking about the skill sets, like some of the soft skills. Are there like some hard skills? Like, is there like certain software? I've heard of what's the budget software? Movie Magic. Is there like certain skills that, hey, you need to learn this software, you need to learn this in order to keep the budget, or what do you think?
I think anything is beneficial to yourself. So you would never not want to know how to do Movie Magic. Like I am not super good at Movie Magic myself, but I have an amazing group of people that are. So if anything where your weakness is, you're going to find a team member that has that strength. I've always said I'm not a line producer. I'm not really wanting to deal with the money, but I go out and I raise all the money for our movies. But then I have an executive producer who once, like, say someone says, okay, I want to give you $150,000 towards your $750,000. Once I have them and they're in, I'm pitching them to come in. Then I pass them off to my executive producer and he handles the signing of the contracts, the explaining the waterfall. Same with a line producer. I have a line producer I work with. So if we need a budget and a schedule, she'll handle that. And so I don't really have those personal skills, but it's okay as long as you have a team member. But I would never say not. I mean, I think in this business, especially as a producer, the more knowledge you have, the more you can. Sometimes you're going to have to do your own schedule. Like we've been in the place where we're like, well, someone's interested in financing this, but they want to see a budget and schedule. Guess what? You have to do it. So I've made my own budgets if I've had to. They're kind of probably a little rinky dink. But if I can't afford to hire someone who's a pro, you have to know how to do everything, especially because that's indie filmmaking for you, So I would say Movie Magic is a great thing to own, learn how to do your own budgets, learn how to schedule things. But I also think learning how to put a budget together can also come from experience. So when we made our first film, we just said, let's just make a movie, and we figured it out as we went. But then you'll learn how much to put in locations, how much to put in actors, how much for crew, how much for costumes. That stuff you're going to learn as you go, and then know how much you really need.
Got it. What's the landscape like for the industry right now? Is it more theatrical, or are we streaming? Whatever happened to DVDs and Blu-rays? So I missed those. So what's the landscape for the industry right now?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm sure as you guys see, it's changing like crazy. I think it's even, I was just having this conversation this morning, talking about the landscape of the film isn't really what the conversation is. The conversation is, how are consumers getting their entertainment? Hollywood hasn't changed. You make a movie. It's how people get their entertainment and how they're becoming used to getting their entertainment. So that makes us have to pivot as the filmmakers, or as Hollywood, as streaming came in and changed the entire game. And because I made my first feature in 2010, I've watched the landscape change as a filmmaker in it. With every movie, the landscape has changed. So, Switch was our last movie that came out in DVDs. And then it was like, oh, wow, okay, now how do we pivot to figure out how only to sell on a streamer? And that's why I think we're in such an interesting, the biggest thing I think for indie film right now that I'm seeing is that you really have to have the distribution plan before you make the movie, where we used to be able to make a movie and get the private investment, go shoot an independent film, and then take it to market. I think that's becoming more and more risky these days as the way consumers are watching their entertainment. So it'd be really good now, is my advice, is to have a distribution plan, which can be really hard because Netflix or these people aren't picking up. If they're not picking up your film, then you're thinking, well, how do I do this? So I think something that's been very exciting that I'm seeing is AVOD, advertising video on demand. Tubi blew up during the pandemic in 2020. And we made a film called At Your Own Risk. It's one of my only movies that I did not sell. It's my only film I didn't sell to a distribution company. I wanted to self-distribute. I wanted to learn how to deal with the landscape of the ever-changing industry. So we wanted to own the rights, and it has been very, very lucrative for us to own the rights of that movie. And we work with an aggregator, which we're going to talk about the difference between a sales agent, an aggregator, and a distribution company. And we work with an aggregator who places your movie onto platforms like Tubi or Amazon Freevee, where it's all ad shares, and you get a percentage of the ads. Look, we're going back to when we were kids and we watched Full House on TGIF, and there was always a commercial. And I think that might be where we might be entering into AVOD. So we went from TVOD, transactional video on demand, Amazon, Apple TV, where you're paying $3.99 to rent something or buy it, to SVOD, streaming video on demand, which is a subscription-based Netflix, Hulu, Paramount Plus, to now AVOD. And I think AVOD is very exciting for independent filmmakers because there's actually a way to recoup your money with ad sales. And if you can drive the audience to watch your movie on Tubi, and every time an ad shows, Tubi pays up the ad shares. That's incredible. So these are all the different changes, and we've watched them. I think the saddest thing for us was losing DVDs. It was a huge part of our revenue stream, and losing that, we have seen that in, and it's very hard to get people to rent something for $3.99 because people are so used to watching things, not really for free, but on a subscription-based thing. So that's how the industry is changing. Now we're seeing Netflix and Amazon, all these people coming out with you can watch it with ads for cheaper. So I think that's going to be a new way people are going to consume. It's nice to see the movie theaters coming back. We lost them for a second. We lost them for a second. It looks like they're coming back. And then it's also watching what does well at the movie theater. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in 2024, horror films have performed like crazy in the box office. And I think it's because it's one of the shared experiences we still want as audiences. This is my guess, because I've been tracking what's making all the money besides Marvel, because you just can't count Marvel. They're Marvel. But to see all these indie horrors or horrors come out, I think it's because people still want to go sit in a movie theater with other people and be scared. Because when you're deciding, am I going to watch this at home on Netflix or am I going to go to the theater? What do you want to watch with a bunch of people? And that's just something I've been recognizing and noticing. And then it's like, okay, so if we're faith-based family, where is our audience going and how do we connect to them and get to them on the indie route? So
with your feature films, was the strategy going to theatrical at all for any kind of promotional things, or like what was that conversation like?
So this has been also ever changing. Switched came out in July of 2020. We were supposed to have a very limited but a pretty solid theatrical run with Switched. The pandemic crushed that, took that away from, and then we didn't get that. And then Greatest Inheritance came out in 2021, I believe, and that didn't even go to DVD. And there was actually no question that we would ever even go to the theater, because to do a theatrical release, you need so much money in P&A, prints and advertising. You need so much marketing money that our films haven't been at the level where someone's going to put in $10 million to release it in the theater. So we actually, I'd say the only time we were, because every movie is, individual. So it's hard to, when we first came out with, Home Sweet Home and Catching Faith and Wish for Christmas, they were always going to be straight to video DVD releases.
Okay.
Then when we got to Switched, we were in a position where we could go theatrical, and we lost that for the pandemic. And now we're not doing theatrical because the amount of marketing money that you need we have to decide, do we really think we're going to recoup that in the theater? And when you see what the theater is doing well with these Marvel movies, these huge action-packed films or huge star names, we have personally not wanted to risk the marketing money, and then we go to a smaller, a smaller risk to recoup the money for the investors. Because at the end of the day, you have to make wise decisions to make sure that you're recouping your money for your investor.
Speaking of agents, what is the purpose of a sales agent?
Yeah, so a sales agent is sort of like, I like to the example of it's an actor's agent in between the actor and the casting director. So a sales agent is taking your movie to market, which is American Film Market, Berlin, any of the large markets that are happening all over now. I'm sure a lot of them have moved to Zoom, but they still have American Film Market, and the sales agent takes a slate of movies to the market, and they meet with all the distribution companies, and they sell your movie to a distribution company. So your sales agent is like the middleman between you and the distribution company, because a distribution company, let's face it, they don't want to meet with the filmmaker. They don't want to tell you to your face that they hate your movie. It's actually like a casting director doesn't really want to deal with the actor. They want to deal with the agent and say, sorry, they're not right for the part. So a sales agent will take like 10 to 15% of the sale of the movie, and they take it out and they pitch it to distribution companies. Now, as we are in an ever-changing landscape of a film world, there's a lot of other ways to do it, like we were talking about an aggregator. So an aggregator is different than a sales agent. A sales agent's going to sell your rights to a U.S. distribution company or Netflix, and then they'll also sell you overseas foreign. Or an aggregator takes your film and they place it on platforms. They take a percentage of every dollar, and the rest of the revenue stream comes back to you. That is very different than a sales agent. A sales agent is selling your entire rights of your movie to a distribution company for either an upfront fee or a percentage in the back end, and they're also taking a percentage. So I feel like an aggregator is really exciting because we've seen that with At Your Own Risk. Working with an aggregator, we actually get to recoup money right away without having to wait for all the overhead of a distribution company. Has a lot of overhead expenses. And also back in the day, they were going to release you on DVD. So it made sense to have a distribution company because they're going to invest all the money it is to package those DVDs, ship them to Walmart's, and then Walmart has a buyback deal. So if your movie doesn't sell, you have to buy it back. And the distribution company took all that risk for you. So now we're just, like you said, we're in a very different time. Do you need that now? But I do say, if you have a relationship with a distribution company or Netflix, just make sure you have a really good entertainment lawyer, because the contracts, I've seen them, they're way over my head.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be able to sign that without having an entertainment lawyer look at it. And a sales agent would come with an entertainment lawyer. So our sales agent that I've worked with for 7 movies, Instrument International, Ryan Keller, he's amazing. Been a great partner for me. He has an entertainment lawyer that works with him. So when they're selling the movie, they also know how the business works, and they have relationships with distribution companies. And if I hadn't had a sales agent on my first film, it never would have sold.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Home Sweet Home never would have sold had I not signed with the sales agent who took it to market, who had a relationship with Image Entertainment, and then they bought the movie. You need that credibility in the space, especially when you're starting out. Now I've made 8 features. I have more relationships. I can take a meeting with Vertical Entertainment or someone on my own because I've sold so much.
Yeah.
But I still wouldn't do it without an entertainment lawyer. That's just my advice.
You mentioned because they know the prices, right? They know from the different territories.
Exactly.
Are markets? What are your thoughts on the markets? Have the markets changed? Like you mentioned, American film market in Berlin. Is that still a thing? Like, has that changed at all?
I've been hearing different things, that they're getting slower at the markets. Like and think about it. It costs a lot of money to fly all over the world and take these meetings. So the sales agent is putting up a lot on their end to go to these markets in Berlin or American film market. But I've heard they are getting much slower. And I think it's because everything is more moving to digital. Like, people aren't all gathering anymore. It's like, why spend all the money to go to Berlin if I can, once you get a rep or someone to rep your feature, you're going to be on a private screener link, and it's going to be sent to them along with the assets, the poster and the information, and then they're going to watch it. And that seems to be more and more happening. Whereas when I first started off, it was all markets. Everything was selling at a market. I don't think that's quite the case anymore.
Wow. So it's like becoming more like just kind of virtual, instead of actually traveling, saving money by just kind of having your own private viewing of a film and then deciding if you want to license it.
Exactly. That seems to be the case. And that's why, and in this industry, I am glad I started 12 years ago, because now everything has become virtual. So getting those meetings can be harder and harder, because it's all about who you know. It's all about who you know. And it's nice to see things coming back, because in LA, I went to every Women in Film event, every event that I could go to. I went to American Film Market to meet and learn what was going on. So I just think but I do think I've heard a lot of things are going online.
Interesting. Are the distributors, are they doing like all media rights, or are they being split up by territory, or what have you seen?
That's a great question, because you can now do it so differently than there used to be a model, and that was it. You sold your movie to the distribution company. They owned all US rights. There wasn't anything else you could do with your movie because they own the rights. Now I'm seeing more and more people parcemealing. Is that the word?
Piecemeal?
Thank you. Piecemeal.
Okay.
Piecemealing their rights out in different ways. And like you were saying, theatrical, you could actually work with somebody who only handles theatrical. And then you can work with another company that only handles TVOD, and then a different. So it looks like now it's kind of exciting, because then one person doesn't own all rights to your movie, and you have more say over where your film is landing, where it's going, and how it's being distributed. So I think that, and also, just so you guys know, when it comes to distribution, if you do have a sales agent or however you're working, you can either sell your rights for worldwide distribution. That means one person owns the world, or you can make sure, like my sales agent always made sure that whoever bought it in the US was only US distribution, so that he could take it to other countries. But if you sign a worldwide deal, that means whatever you got from that distribution company, that's it until they take it out to other countries. So it's actually been great for us in the indie world that, like, Germany will buy our movie, Austria will buy our movie, and we get little more sales off of that than if we had decided to just do a worldwide distribution deal with someone. Now, Netflix might be a worldwide distribution because now Netflix is in the world, you know?
Right.
I think that there's lots of different ways to do it now. And I think that's why an aggregator is exciting, because they're not going to sell your rights off to one place. It's you can sit down with your aggregator and say, okay, I want to be here. I want to be there. How can we make this happen? And then say, this just happened recently. Somebody wanted one of my films for a platform. I could go to my aggregator and say, I'm going to do this on my own. Whereas once you sell it to a distribution company, you can't do anything on your own.
Wow. And how long are those deals normally? Are they a lifetime or
20 years?
Oh, okay.
15 to 20 years is pretty standard. I think nowadays people are doing less, like 12 years. And I've heard some people saying they're trying to get down to 7 years. That's a long time to not have the rights. And it's been interesting to watch, like Home Sweet Home, my first thriller. You know, we sold that in 2011 for a flat fee to a US distribution company. And then to watch the landscape change, I wish I had the rights to that movie.
Oh, I see.
Because I'm like, oh, I could do this with that movie and I could do that. But but it was sold, you know, 14 year deal. I can't do anything. And if I do want to, I have to go through my sales agent. I have to go through the distribution company and say, hey, I have this opportunity. So I think it's a very exciting time where you can own your rights and have a little more control over it.
Got you. In the comments, we had Stephanie. She talks about, like, seems a little bit overwhelming.
Just a little bit,
Stephanie. Speaking of which, what are like some sacrifices or some things that people may not be aware of if they decide to become a producer, and like kind of how much time it takes to really do this?
Yeah. Well, first off, her name was Stephanie.
Yes.
Okay, well, Stephanie, it's very overwhelming when you hear it like this. But if you just take one step at a time, I wrote a book called Create Your Own Career in Hollywood, and I have a whole article, a whole chapter dedicated to, if you see the forest for the trees, you're never going to do it. You have to just look at one tree at a time, and every day conquer that tree, because you're right. If you look at the whole thing, you'll get so overwhelmed, you'll stop before you even try. So I am so glad that when I started my film career and I said, I'm going to make my own movie, I just learned everything every day until I figured out what I needed to do. And then you can't look at it like that, because you're right. You're hearing a lot of information coming at you fast. But if you really want to make a movie, you just say, okay, today I'm taking the first step to make a movie. I need a script, and then you need a director. You know, it's just one by one. So I just really want to encourage you not to be overwhelmed, but to just know that this is also, I started in, 24 years ago in the industry, and that's, it's taken me a long time. And like you said, I've made huge sacrifices. I literally paid for my first feature film out of my own pocket. And I every day was just learning how to make a movie on that movie, which I'm actually glad I learned on my own dime, because I didn't know what I was doing and I had no business taking other people's money, let me tell you. But I educated myself and I figured it out, and I finished it and I sold it. And then I made a huge sacrifice in about 2012 when my sales agent said, you should make a faith-based film. We could sell it for triple the budget. They're really hot. That's another thing. If you have people in the industry who can tell you what's selling, it's really good to be able to cater to what is. But also, don't forget that it takes 1.5 to 2 years to make a movie, and that could change in 2 years. So don't follow the trend so much that you put yourself behind, because then you got a movie that was a trend from 2 years ago. But we did get the opportunity to make a faith-based film, and the budget was so small that I could either keep my LA apartment or I could make the movie. It really was a choice. And I gave up my apartment. I put everything I owned in storage, and I spent 1 year living out of a suitcase to make Catching Faith a reality, because I couldn't pay myself to make the movie. So I had to take what savings I had left and a little bit of money that I got from the film. But that sacrifice was the best sacrifice I ever made in my entire life, because that movie sold and it really jump-started our entire career. My sales agent was right. faith-based was on the rise at the time, and they were selling for hire in the market, and there was a big need for them. And so I made that sacrifice, but I lived out of my car in one suitcase to make that movie. And that's just one of all the sacrifices.
Wow. Stephanie, she said, I ordered a book. Thank you. And also Pablo on here said, hey, I would like a reference on an agent. So I think Pablo's a producer as well. So
okay. A sales agent?
Pablo, was that a sales agent that you were thinking about? Probably. I'm not going to pitch his film for him.
Okay.
Sacrifice though. So that could be surprising to somebody that may not know like what it takes to become a producer and like everything that you have to bring on. I know when we consulted with you, from idea to distribution was about 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a documentary with some scripted in there, and but it's like our baby. It's something that we're proud of, and to this day, it makes money, and we're super happy about it. But it was a big time commitment.
So, yeah. And, you know, you really have to love what you're doing. I mean, that's why you can't just follow trends or try to make something to please people. You have to, first and foremost, you're going to be with this project for the rest of your life. It's like singers who are songwriters who say, when you write that song and you perform it, you're going to play it for the rest of your life. This is the same with films. So you don't want to make anything that you don't absolutely love, care about. It's your heart and soul that you're going to spend years working on and then spend the rest of your life promoting or dealing with distribution or marketing forever. So I love that you said, you were like, it's your baby. They're your babies. Mm-hmm. If you find that they're like, when we got the chance to make faith-based, we made sure that we were making things that we cared about within that space. We weren't just like, oh, we're just going to make something and hope an audience likes it. I think you always have to first love it, because otherwise, how would it connect with an audience if you don't first have the heart for it? And it doesn't, mm-hmm. If it moves me, then I hope it would move someone else. And, you know, so it takes a long time. It's a long road, and you have to love it.
It's an adventure.
It is an adventure.
What, in your opinion, what's the most like lucrative business model currently? Is it licensing? Is it working for a fee? Like if you work for Marvel or something like that, and you get a fee for being a producer, or like selling the rights to the distributor? What's most lucrative right now in this market?
Sure. I think, oh my gosh, I think if you could produce for the studio, that is the most lucrative. You know, indie films have always been more of a heart, in people's heart, or a passion project. Mm-hmm. Sundance, you know, was just all passion projects of people doing things that were, but I think obviously the most lucrative would be to go and produce a Marvel movie.
Right.
I mean, that would make you a lot of money, and you will be living pretty if you can work for the studios. But I think that it also, like a lot of people say, I don't want to compromise what I want, what I love, what I want to do. Mm-hmm. It really depends. You know, I walked away from a $2.5 million deal for Switch because I wouldn't compromise on making it raunchy or having the girls do inappropriate things. So, right. You know, you might end up taking your movie to a studio, but you have to make sure you're aligned with that studio on how they're going to bring your project to life. Now, that's different than being a work for hire. Like if a studio called me tomorrow and said, I want to hire you to produce, and the paycheck was great, I'd take it and work for them. But it's different when it's your own thing and you're writing something and you're like, I care about this. I don't want to hand this off to a studio and then have a bunch of hands in it that are going to change it. So it really depends what you want at the end of the day. But if you're talking about lucrative, get in the Marvel camp.
It's funny. So raising money, you talked about raising money.
Yeah.
And there was a budget for one of your films for about $430,000.
Yeah.
$430,000. I can't remember which film that was.
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk about how you raised that film, how you raised that money for that film?
Yeah. Yeah. So actually my first two, besides the movie that I paid for myself, mm-hmm. Catching Faith 1 and Wish for Christmas, I'd worked with an executive producer who was my sales agent who raised all the private investment. And then those movies actually sold and they recouped their money. But my sales agent got really busy with his day job, which is being a sales agent. And he said,
Right.
I will stay on as your executive producer, but I just don't have the time to raise the money. So like we were talking about before, you have to figure out how to do everything in this business if you don't have someone else who'll do it for you. So I had to figure out, how do you raise money for a movie? So we had a couple scripts, and I just started talking to everyone I could talk to about what we needed. And I think switched. I took out to every studio. I took it to Netflix, Lionsgate. I had so many meetings for Switched, and it kept getting rejected in the script level, which we were really surprised. It's like Mean Girls meets Freaky Friday. It was such like a no-brainer concept, but we just couldn't get a studio deal. And then me being a big mouth who goes out and tells, I mean, no one knows what you need unless you tell them. So I have no problem. The answer is already no if you don't ask. I live by that philosophy. So I just started talking to people, and I met a woman who completely aligned with this movie. And she also had seen all my films at that time and loved them. And she was like, I believe in you, and I would like to fund this film. And she actually funded that movie. And then she also funded another one of my films. So I think it's finding like-minded. If you're going to go for independent private investment, you're not going after so much banks or hedge fund companies. You're going after people who care about the mission of what you're doing. So we are often, especially since we make faith-based, I'm going after people who believe in the content of what we are making and saying, do you want to see more of this entertainment in the world? Then put your dollars behind it and let's make it. And of course, at this point, we had a track record of coming under budget on all of our films, selling all of our films and recouping them, which is why longevity and your reputation and how you treat people and how you make it is so important, because you're not just making one movie. You're hopefully have a repertoire of films. So, so she came on, and then I've had a couple of other producing partners that I've partnered with, and we just start knocking on doors. I mean, I'm not kidding. I had one partner who was so amazing. She just picked up the phone and called people and was like, we need $100,000. And I learned so much from her. And that's the other thing. Surround yourself with go-getters and finishers and people who teach you to be, because I find myself to be a pretty, bold person. And then I met someone who was even bolder. And I was like, you're right. You should just pick up the phone. You're gonna have to cold call people. And yes, so that's what we do. And then if you have investors that have worked, all of our investors have been really happy with the outcome, the project, what it's done for the world. And a lot of them have come back in. So that's another thing. You want to make sure that your investors are happy and that they will, say, I will invest in the next one. And that's how you do private. And then I think no matter what you're doing, you need to find people that align with what your message is in your film, because that's what's going to sell them in the end. Is they're like, I care about bullying for kids. Let's make a movie that teaches kids to love each other,
From a business standpoint, just kind of generically, so you have your LLC, you have your investors going to give the money, they put the money in. How was that split up? So once, is there, they get the money coming in first? Is there like a interest that's paid out? Do y'all split it after they get their profits? How do y'all determine that?
Great question. So investors are first money in, first money out. So your investor is going to be the first person to see money afterwards. Usually you'll sign a deal that says that they have first money back plus 20%. So right now, one of our movies is recouped wholly, but we're still recouping that 20% before the waterfall comes back to the filmmakers in the waterfall stream. And I know this gets really confusing. So, but yeah, once you've, this is why it's also really good to have a business manager, an executive producer who understands business, because like I said, I'll go out and get people excited and I'll say, hey, invest in us. But then when it comes to the real business side of it, I have a partner that knows that, because it's okay that we can't do everything. I can only do it. There's so many hours of the day, Reginald.
Right.
I can do everything. And then I'm like, I really need someone to help me with the business side of it. And also you do want somebody who's an entertainment lawyer or business that handles those contracts and knows what the investors should get. And also, just so you guys know, investors investor recruitment is different on every movie, and it's different according to how much they put into that movie. Because you might have different investors. You could have one investor that invested 50% of the budget, and then someone else invested 30%, and then someone else invested 20%. And that's going to break down different when they own it. So that gets real confusing. And that's why before you start your movie, you know exactly what the percentage would be for each investor, because sometimes it's different on each film or how much they put in. And that's getting really into like a business class we'd have to have. And I'd have to bring in my
right. Yeah, right. Roland, that was good. So you've worked with celebrities, and you also act as well. Saw you in Switched as the science teacher. Did well. What's that like working with celebrities? You know, how difficult is it, like getting talking to the agent to actually talk to them? Do you talk to them directly? How does that work?
Great question. So before I had a casting director, we did it. Our executive producer actually wrote the letters to the agents. So we wanted Bill Engvall in Catching Faith. So my executive producer wrote the proposal, sent it to his agent. And of course, it was amazing that it got to him and he signed on to the movie. Before we got casting directors, I used to cast all the movies. So I would do Actors Access and I'd sift through. But when it came to star names, before I had a casting director, it was always my executive producer. We all sat down and talked, who's right for this role? Who should we go after? So for Wish for Christmas, my executive producer wrote he actually made the proposal to Joey Lawrence's agent, Lee Allen Baker. So you could have an executive producer, or you could, if you can get to the agent and you can get it in their hands, anyone can. Now we work with Lisa London and Catherine Stroud, and they are casting directors. They joined our team. And I say that because we've worked together now on 4 movies, because once you find your teammates, keep them.
Right.
They did Switched. And she and Lisa and Catherine were able to get us Denise Richards, John Schneider, Vanessa Merrill. They got us all the names. And that having a casting director is obviously going to be your best bet if you can afford a casting director, because they have the relationships with the agents. They have they can get your script in anyone's hands. One of our favorite casting stories is Jaleel White from The Greatest Inheritance. As you guys all know, he played Steve Urkel. I pretty much had a heart attack when I loved Family. I grew up on Family Matters. So when we found out I was like, I don't know if I could be on set with Jaleel White. But our casting director was actually friends with his agent and called him up and said, I think Jaleel is perfect for this role. The agent said he stayed up all night reading the script, and he's like, I'm telling Jaleel to be on an airplane. So the power of a casting director who can get through to the agent and have the agent pretty much just tell the actor, this is what you're doing, because that's what the agent's job is. So I think that having a casting director is amazing. And then I think that you just also, when it comes to star names, you really need to be able to have some money. You always want to set aside money in your budget to pay star names, and to have a little extra for whatever they need, whether they need a trailer or a private room with a bathroom, or if they need costume clearance, which happens where they get to decide what their costumes are. So when we do our budgets now, we really put money aside, because we wouldn't want to lose an actor because we weren't able to afford the costume for them to get the costumes they want. Sometimes they're stars. They get to decide how they look. And so, but I think one thing that I want to say about actors and our star names is, because of the content we're creating, which are all uplifting, inspirational, life-giving movies, a lot of our actors sign on because they're like, we believe in the message of this movie. And I have to say that goes a long way on an independent set, because, we got Denise Richards and John Schneider showing up on the same day. Yeah. I'm a nervous wreck because we're an indie film. Yeah. But they came with such beautiful spirits, because they were like, we know this is an independent and we're here because of the message. We care. That's and cool. Jaleel White was like that too. Mina Suvari, who we worked with. And so I think that's what I love doing inspirational films, is that's why we get star names, because actors want to do things they're proud of and things that they care about and things that they want to go promote in the world. And a lot of them have kids. And so if you can write something that can really tug at the heartstring of a star name, and then what their morals are, or what we just wrote a script about addiction recovery, and we wrote it for a very big actor, knowing that this is big on their heart, is a recovery from drugs and alcohol. So then we're going to go after playing it, hoping that would tug on her heartstrings and she'd sign on. So it's all strategy too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did that answer the question?
It did. Rebranding, because when you started, the name of your company was Mustard Seed, right?
Yeah, it was Mustard Seed Entertainment.
And can you kind of walk us to why you rebranded to the Boylan Sisters and kind of give us that story?
Yeah. So when we first made Catching Faith, we just kind of had to come up with a name. We were actually Mirror Tree Productions, but that was under our horror movie. So we switched to faith-based, and we knew we were rebranding ourselves then. And we went under Mustard Seed because with a grain of salt, you can do anything that the Bible says. And we came from nothing. And we were like, all right, with our little grain of salt, look at what God has done with our life. But as our films came out and as the team changed and people wanted to go off and do horror movies or change, my sister and I really decided that it was best to brand ourselves in this very specific space where it has there's a lot of male, like brother teams. Even in mainstream, there's the Coen brothers, the Safdie brothers, and then in faith-based, there's the Kendrick brothers and the Irwin brothers, and everybody knows them. And one thing we were finding out, my sister and I, when we would meet with people, they didn't know that Andrea and I made Switched and Catching Faith and The Greatest Inheritance. And people didn't know those were all of our movies. So we were like, okay, we have to rebrand so that when people see our name, they know every movie we've made, because that was also hurting us in the market, that people weren't like, oh, I didn't know that the same girls that made Catching Faith made Switched. I would have watched it because I'm trusting your brand. So we decided to rebrand to the Boylan Sisters, and we have been really pushing out, like, these are our movies. We're a trusted brand that you can trust with your kids. You can watch our movies. And that has been we hope that continues to build our career, because Mustard Seed didn't really mean anything to anybody. They were like, what's Mustard Seed Entertainment? And it didn't. So if that makes sense, it's also been really good for marketing and for getting us interviews. People want to interview the Boylan Sisters. And even the Irwin brothers stood up at a conference the other day and he was like, thank goodness we have sisters. And people want to be inclusive and invite all the people. So I think that for the faith world, it's like, here's some sisters trying to pave the way for women in that space.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It makes me think of, is it Warner Brothers? I don't know. And like Warner Brothers, is that Warner Brothers? Or like, just how strong a brand can be, or when we're talking about horror, like Blumhouse and all that, just
Blumhouse.
Like having a strong brand is like, okay, it's going to be quality content.
Exactly. And then it's figuring out how that does. Yeah, exactly. So we just realized that Mustard Seed name wasn't really working, and we had to figure out a new way to make it work. That's what we're always evolving in this industry. There is no right or wrong. Even our entire conversation, it's like, there's no golden road to success, or we'd all be on it. Let me tell you.
That's true.
Trial and error. We're figuring out as we go. And it just shows that you can always change, you can always shift, you can always pivot, that it's ever evolving. And we just literally last year rebranded and we're like, here we go.
Yes. I like it though. I like how you've been able to package all your films together, and it kind of has, even with the key art, there's like kind of like a energy there. It's a flow where it's like, okay, that's a Boylan Sister look.
Yeah, and Catalyst Movies that does all the church licensing, we were able to go to them and say, hey, you have the drop-down menu of the Kendrick brothers and the Irwin brothers. Would you have a drop-down menu of our movies? And they were like, of course. And that wouldn't have happened if we were Mustard Seed, because they're not taking names like that. So it really has been a good strategy. And you're right. Like, it's really important. Marketing is the name of the game, right? You can make everything you want, but if nobody sees it, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely. We're coming up on an hour now.
Yes.
So we're going to be wrapping up. How you looking on time? You got like an extra 5 minutes? I want to
Yeah,
kind of go.
of course.
Okay. Let me see what we have here. Oh, what is there anything that you would like to plug? Like any kind of mentorships, any classes, your books? Can you kind of plug what you have going
Yeah,
on?
yeah. Please pick up the How to Create Your Own Career in Hollywood. That's on Amazon. And then also, our newest movie is Identity Crisis. It's so delightful. It's out on Amazon and Apple TV and Vudu. But because we're independent and we didn't get a streamer, you'll have to rent it. And if you do rent it, you're really supporting us, because we've noticed a lot of people are like, we're going to wait till it's on Netflix. Well, Netflix didn't pick us up. So please rent us on Amazon or Apple TV. Identity Crisis. We also wrote a book that goes along with it. And all of our films are available on Amazon. If you go to the BoylanSisters.com, you can see all the links to all of our films. And then all of our films come with companion materials. They come with journals, youth groups, Bible studies, women's studies, so that one of our main goals with our movies is to start conversations for families. We don't want to just make movies. We want to equip parents on how to start a hard conversation with your kid. So if you guys love the movie and you love the message, we hope parents will buy the books and sit down and go, what does it look like to love your neighbor as yourself? Each of our movies have themes, and we really want to raise up the next generation of kids with good tools to live a prosperous life and to be kind to each other and all that. So those are BoylanSisters.com. I actually do have a new class coming out through Faith and Film Guild that's coming up you can unlock my classes and go deeper into all this stuff that in 1 hour does sound overwhelming. So, and also I'm on Instagram, Alexandra Boylan. I'm on Facebook. I don't do Twitter. So if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to do a class. I do privates with people. I do one-on-one to kind of go dive deeper into this. And I love to help other people succeed.
Stephanie had mentioned a mentorship with Jacqueline Witt. Is that kind of part of it? Okay.
That's Faith and Family Guild. So yes, you can now get a mentorship with us and sign up for our classes. And we're doing one-on-ones. And we spent like a month recording lots of classes that go into different parts of the industry. Because it's like, Reginald, it's so hard when anybody asks a broad question, it's like, okay, there's this broad answer. And then we've got to dive it down into little tiny, which is why I think it can feel so overwhelming. So we're always this is a way for us to go, okay, let's break it down from script to pre-production to production to post to marketing to selling. And then all the other things you have to
because you've learned all the stuff from like just years of producing that, just try to compile it. It's like, oh my God, how do you do that?
It's so hard and I have 8 features and every one is a different experience and yet the same experience. So there are some things that are tried and true that will never go out. Like your poster will never not be the most important part of your movie, but then how your movie gets distributed is changing. So, it's like we said, and ever evolving. But please sign up, Stephanie, and thanks for joining us. And if anyone wants to write me on Instagram, I always write everyone back, and I love to interact with people. So
rock and roll. One last one. James, he mentioned, do you have any tips for production companies looking for film gigs?
Production companies looking to be hired by someone who's doing a film.
Yeah, because I guess that's the lucrative path, right?
A lucrative path. Well, I think that's right. Well, I was thinking more like as a producer being hired by a studio.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
I think that could be trickier being a production company, because then you've got to get someone who doesn't have. But I think if you have a production company, I would go out and find a script and make a movie. If you already have the production company in place, if you have that, I would go get the script and I would find a way to make it, as opposed to waiting for someone to come. But I think you're waiting for someone to come and hire you to produce their movie, right? Which is getting harder and harder, because like most people, if you're going to raise the money yourself, you can put the whole entire movie together.
Right. Which leads to my next thing. My theory is everybody wants to be on the red carpet. Everybody wants to produce and be there on set, but nobody wants to write. Talk about, we'll conclude on this. Like, can you talk about how you got into writing and how powerful that is that you write your own content and it opens up so much doors?
Yes. So actually, my first feature, I had my brother write it. I was really busy. I was standing in on the first Thor. I was Kat Denning's stand-in. I've worked on every aspect of this industry, and I was so busy as a stand-in, I couldn't write the script. My brother came in and wrote the script, and then we all kind of collaborated on that movie. And then when it came to Catching Faith, I'm really glad that I was like, I'm going to figure out how to write it. I don't want to have to rely on somebody else, or anytime you're relying on someone else, you're on their time zone. So I went and I was also an actor for a long time. So I spent a lot of time reading screenplays, reading plays, and understanding story. And I have to say, the best thing I ever bought was Save the Cat.
Blake Snyder. Let's
It's
go.
right here next to me. I'm working on a script right now because I'm always writing. And I just figured out how to write my own script. And it's so important because that's a really big way you can take charge of your own career as being the screenwriter. And I've taken all of my own screenplays from conception to completion, which has helped me get a leg into the industry. Now I could produce for someone, but writing is so important because as the producer and as the writer, you have to know your target demographic. Okay. When you're making a movie, don't ever say it's for everybody. Your movie needs to speak to a specific demographic because that's how people market. Nobody knows how to market your movie unless they know who they're marketing it to. So I knew my audience, I knew my market as a woman in the faith space. And I'm glad that I got that book, taught myself how to write the screenplay. And let me tell you another real important tip, you guys. If you buy or license somebody's script, that can be tricky on set when you want to make changes like that. I own my scripts. So on set, if we lose a location, I'm rewriting it for a different location. That's one of the things I love about writing my own script is I have no problem saying, we didn't go to bowling alley. Let's rewrite it for a roller rink. Because on set, you guys are going to have to change. Like, you have to be flexible. And with my scripts, I know my scripts so well that if we lose a location or we lose an actor or something happens, I can rewrite that in a heartbeat. Whereas if you don't, then you have to go back to the writer, and that can take too much time. We don't have time on set. We have to solve problems and put out fires. And I can do it really quickly because I own the script and it's mine, and I can pivot really fast, which in independent filmmaking,
Yes.
Get really good at pivoting, people. You gotta change things on a dime. If something falls through, you just have to figure it out.
Absolutely. I wanted to kind of end on that because I think that's very important for people to understand by having that control by writing, something that you want to see once you write it, if it doesn't exist.
That's right. That's right. If you want to see it, you have to be the one to do it. If you have to be the change you want to see in the world.
Agreed. Alexandra, appreciate it.
This was fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. And anybody that's listening, again, we're a 501c3 organization. Go to groundovermatter.org. If you want to see more workshops like this, please go on there, subscribe, and give some donations there. And we're going to keep this going. And if there's somebody you would like to refer so that we can interview them, please send it our way. Thank you so much, Alexandra. You have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.